for America's future. And it's interesting how this got started. If we hadn't had the pandemic, we wouldn't be here doing this today. We'd be doing something else, maybe meeting in person, because there have been a number of things that have happened that we are not accustomed to, at least in this country. This term called social distancing, stay at least 6 feet away and wear face masks. Now, those of us that have traveled to Asia over the years have known that face masks are not new there, but they became new here in this country. And we've gone to so many virtual meetings, which is what we're having right now. But it's not just virtual meetings, there's virtual other stuff that's going on. Big impact on airplanes and hotels. I was one person who traveled 70–80% of the time. The longest I went without being on an airplane or in a hotel in more than 25 years once the pandemic struck. Online shopping is not a new concept, but we're seeing more and more and more of that, where people go outside to pick it up, or they have it delivered, or they order it and maybe they go in the store and pick it up. Digital supply chains becoming part of the future. You're going to hear some about how that is working from a couple of our speakers. And then as we look at factories, you've heard about reshoring, onshoring, backshoring, nearshoring, still shoring. Well, the on-demand micro factories, and the term micro means small, but it doesn't necessarily mean the factory will be small. It means that you can order small quantities, have them on demand. And again, 3D is not new, but we're seeing an increase in all of that as a result of this pandemic. And yes, it has caused disruption for many, many people, including us who are now virtual, and it's causing us to rethink things. And at TC2, we've been rethinking things for a long time, but now we've been rethinking TC2 as totally committed to cool. We only want to do things that are cool. But in addition to that, telling companies to change, that is TC2. And some of them just don't want to change. And so then we have to say, well, if not, then maybe we're too cool to care. We're going to move on and work with people that are able to make a change. And since TC2 is an acronym, I couldn't resist trying to figure out what is a pandemic. And a couple of things struck me. Placing a natural, deadly enemy more in control is a pandemic. Or, as some people have liked preaching, posting America's newest deadly enemy as made in China. We still don't know for sure about all of that, but there's been a lot of discussion about it. So as we spend the next, say, almost 2 hours of talking about America's future and where we're going to go as a result of this pandemic, you're going to hear first from Dr. Trevor Little at North Carolina State University. You can see all of the bios from our speakers in your online invitations that you receive. But Trevor will first take about 20 minutes and talk about the future of fashion, where things are going inside and outside the country. Then Will Duncan, who is Executive Director of Seams, but he's also President and founder of Will Duncan and Associates, so he'll share a little bit about that. But we'll talk about the role of America during this pandemic and how it's going to impact the industry. And then I'll come on for about 20 minutes on factors and solutions, and as one part, some of the technologies that have been around, but how they're going to change the way we think and do. And then Anastasia Buyoka will do a part 2 and take us through a lot of the product development and digital creation of product and that sort of thing. And then we have some wonderful government support from Glenn Jackman with the Economic Development Partnership in North Carolina. And he's going to talk not just about North Carolina, but about a lot of things in this country where there's availability of funds to do some things, particularly for smaller companies. So with that, we want to kick things off with Trevor Little. And again, we'll ask you that if you have a question or something that pops up, go on chat and ask it. And if we have time, we'll answer it. If not, then we'll see if we can't get the speakers to answer it separately to you. So with that, Trevor, if you will kick us off and begin,
Yeah, good morning. First of all, just a little bit of technology here. I'm going to share my screen. So everybody should just see a screen with Zoom at the top. And then I'm going to go over to a PowerPoint presentation. And I have to move people around a little bit to get to the tools. And so what you should now see is full screen, the future of fashion. So, by the way, I do work at NC State University, and I've worked here for quite a while. And before coming to NC State, I worked in industry. And so it was really quite an interesting transition from industry to academia. And many people think that academia is not affected by pandemics, but I'm here to tell you that the pandemic has maybe had a bigger impact on the academia than even some of the industry. So we too are struggling through what the future is going to look like. And it's actually pretty exciting. You have to embrace it and make it an exciting future. And so if I advance, the first thing I want to just talk about is the consumer. And if we take our eye off the consumer, I think we're going to lose sight of where we're actually going. And so one of the things, and we've been working with this group, Gen Z, for a couple of years. And the Gen Z is really interesting, and you'll find different stories on this, but they were born between about 1995 and 2010 or 2012, or 1997 and 2012. But they're very committed. They're very focused at work. And so as a profile, we think that this younger generation is not able to work, but they're actually really able to work. But they've never known a world without the internet. And they currently represent about 25% of your customers. So it's important to focus on this group. They're entering the workforce and they have some disposable income, but they don't want to wear what I wear. So there's a fashion pyramid in a way across these different consumer groups. So by 2026, which is not very far away, this Gen Z group is going to represent some 82 million people in the US. So that is a significant market that I don't think we can afford to miss. And they're already here. So we should be practicing our fashion with this Gen Z. They're very sophisticated digitally because they've always grown up with the internet. And digital sophistication has to be in fashion's future. And I think you're going to hear a lot about digital applications through a different number of speakers. And so when they're profiled, this Gen Z, they're technology addicted and they are social justice aware, meaning they are going to gravitate to a cause. And we're going to spend a little bit more time on that. There are other consumer groups too. And so the other one before that was Gen Y, or the millennials, and they were born between 1980 and 1994. And there's a lot of them, roughly about 70 million. And they are also pretty tech savvy, very self-expressive, confident, and they like new ideas and things. So when we look at this market, you know, half the population basically is Gen Y and Gen Z. So I fall into that baby boomer category, and maybe a few others will also be in that category. There's about 75 million of us. We're known as workaholics. We never stop. But it doesn't mean that we're going to be investing a lot in fashion. So, and maybe we don't need to focus on that Generation X, which was before that. It's often called the middle child. I can say this because I'm a middle child, between the boomers and the Gen Y. And they basically have too much debt for the fashion world. It doesn't mean they don't spend, it just means they have a lot of debt. The other part of this, as we look at the future, is that different cohorts want to invest in different types of fashion. That is, we're going to have a pyramid across these different groups. I have yet to see somebody tackle this issue. This is just a couple of graphs showing all the cohorts. A cohort really is somebody who has an experience. Roughly every 10 or 12 years or so, we get new cohorts. And this slide is in here because this Gen Z is up here, and they're now called Zoomers. And I was really amazed to see the word a Zoomer instead of a boomer applied to a generation. And so maybe this teleconferencing ability is indeed here to stay. So there's a trend. And so a bit of a trend happening. So, and these are quotes. And so from Deloitte, they say, Gen Z no longer forms opinions of a company solely based on the quality of its products, but also on their ethics and practices and social impact. In other words, you're communicating with your consumer about the firm's approach to business as well as your product. And this is relatively new for us. We've often ignored the social impact of business. And I don't think we can afford to ignore that anymore. So it's a really important part of the future. The next thing when we look into the future is, are you in the conversation? How are you going to get into that conversation? And so when the younger generation talk about your products, are your products and the firm on the list? Because it goes back to those old trickle theories. So one consumer will talk to another consumer, and we have tools to do that. So you get into the trickle across theories. And that's how you get into fashion diffusion theories, et cetera, and how your products become well known. So the first rule is, rule one, products are conversations, meaning people talk about them. And they open up a dialogue with the consumer, and the consumers talk about your product. And rule two is, products come with intrinsic and extrinsic attributes. So intrinsic essentially means things that are inside the product. It could be its color, it could be its fit, it could be its style, it could be its aftercare performance. Those are all intrinsic. The other part of a product is the extrinsic, which creates the image. And so image becomes very important in fashion because fashion is the image. And so we can't ignore these extrinsic properties or attributes. So it could be a label, it could be a cause, it could be something else that's generating this extrinsic attribute. And so the future is going to require both. And this corporate entity must show empathy towards a cause. And I call it a cause because typically this new generation of consumers do indeed like to follow a cause. And they will follow a company that embraces causes. And so this is pretty important for getting into the conversations. So as we started off earlier, we said we're subject to these big changes in a very short time. And so as we were preparing for this, nobody heard of Zoom in February. But by March, we were all Zooming. And so it was a very short time for anybody to change. So we'd be remiss if we ignored that. And everybody's affected. So I don't know of anybody who's not affected. So it's affected our consumers, our businesses, our supply chains, and our products. So everything's been affected. And you can see data that shows sales just plummeted earlier this year. But maybe, you know, you have to look on the positive side, and maybe what we needed was some significant event just to show how creative and resilient we can be. And I think that this is what we're now seeing. We're seeing these two things come about. We're seeing huge amounts of creativity, and we're seeing tremendous resilience because of this change. And we're continuing to learn and create new things, so that's going to continue. And so one of the bigger changes, by the way, is how we interact with that consumer. And the consumer is continuing to ask for new products. So even though we may be in a time of major change, let's not forget that we also must be creative along the way. So this teleconferencing now has become the normal way to communicate. And like this event on Zoom or some equivalent teleconferencing tools, we can do that. One of the things that's different though is that the camera points only to the upper body. And so we're all learning now how to behave in front of cameras and what your background is going to look like. My background is my office, it's just a mess, but other people are putting up different screens to hide these things. So there's a lot of work on the technology side. But it's not surprising to find that the fashion design and development has turned attention to the upper body so that it can look at the that part of the body, which is usually face and neck. So the camera faces there. The lower body and garments that fit on the lower body are hidden from the camera, and they've become the comfort garments. Because I don't know if you're in the same boat, but if you Zoom for a long time, it's not very comfortable. In other words, as long as we live in a pandemic, fashion will flex to accommodate the camera. And this is very new for us. We've never had an industry in front of the camera. And I think we're going to see big changes because of that as we go along. We spent years looking at product development calendars. One slide will not do justice to this PhD dissertation. But calendars across our industry vary from about 14 months down to 1 month. This is the first time anybody's looked with a focus on time. And everybody said time was really important. But the first finding was there's no obvious connection between calendar time and business success. So you could have a really long calendar and you could still be successful in business. You can have a really short calendar and still be very successful in business. The second thing we found is that making samples, meaning like sales samples, as well as prototype samples, take a lot of time. And business notices, and when I say a lot of time, there were some examples of companies taking up to 6 months to get sales samples. And that was applied to the product development calendar, where maybe it should be broken out because design and development is actually quite fast. The other thing that is really important is that time in the calendar is very much related to the organization. And so by organization, I mean, if you have a really short calendar, you can go direct to the consumer. There is no retail entity in between. If you go fast fashion type calendar, you do need a good retail structure and almost like a private label entity to have that in between. And the longest calendars typically are for the brands in a traditional mode. But because samples take so much time, we think this is fueling the interest in 3D prototyping. And so getting a 3D image of a fitted garment, what it looks like, is pushing this 3D prototyping. So if samples are in your current practice, 3D prototyping might be in your immediate future. And so don't ignore some of this. And we're getting a lot of push here in the academia to train people in 3D. The other thing that's happening is materials. And materials are really important because they're the products that make the product. And they're also the content of those materials are on the label. So that's by law, and you can't avoid that, and the consumers can read the labels. And so coupled with these movements to vegan food, so there's a lot of change in the food industry, there's a segment of the population wanting vegan clothes and vegan shoes. And so it means all plant-based is essentially what it is. And so 5 to 8% of the US population is vegan. So it's a significant market for these new entrepreneurs. And so vegan materials are abundant, and new ones are coming. And so things like cotton and hemp and pineapple and coconut are the plant-based fibers, and there's a lot more. And then these mycelium structures doing the artificial leathers are coming on stream. So what we're beginning to see is this whole new wave of sustainable materials that essentially are vegan. And so you're familiar with shoes. There's a shoe out there, I think it's called oat shoe, where you can actually just plant the shoe in the ground and seeds grow because there's seeds implanted in the shoes. So it's very creative and very interesting trends that are coming about. The other thing that's happened just this year is these big box retailers, we call big box retailers like the Walmarts and Targets and things like that. The big box retailers stayed open, made changes, and grew like crazy. And so some of the spikes, for example, Target spiked as the largest quarterly sale growth, including online sales spike in its 58-year history. So just because you're open. So what has happened in our industry is that these 5, the Walmart, Amazon, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's and Costco are 6, account for 29% of all US retail sales. And we need to watch this really carefully because at least 3 of these, or maybe 4, will actually market fashion directly to the consumer. And if you're not in this group, you may have to make a big effort and get into that group because that's where the consumer is actually visiting. And so how we interface with that consumer is going to drive that future of fashion. I'm not going to spend much time on workforce, but we have to train and retrain our workforce. And we have to have an available workforce and a willing workforce in all areas. And I mean all areas so that we can get the future going. And I think that more speakers are going to add a little bit to this workforce. The other thing that's happened is all our trade events. This is where we used to gather in person and discuss things and topics informally. They've now all gone virtual. And so that's been a big change for us. And so as Mike was saying earlier, You used to get on a plane and go to a hotel. Now you don't do that. You get on a Zoom call or something similar. And so one of the big things in these virtual events that's popped up is it's not the information that you know, it's the information that you don't know. And there's no good way of getting at this. You know, when we use search engines, which we all do, it's because we have information somewhat, and you already know, and the search engines have some element of bias in it. So the big challenge for us is how we get a repository of information where we can find things that we don't know. That is, learn something new, because it's the new who's going to drive us forward. And then this is my last slide. And it's sort of my opinion slide. There's a strong force pushing us to collaborate, or pointing to collaborate. I don't know if you study force fields, but there'll always be a resistant force. And if the force for is stronger than the force against, we will begin to collaborate. And so we need to collaborate with our consumers. We need to collaborate with our customers. And we need to collaborate with each other in the professional practice. And so that collaboration must extend all the way from the designer to the consumer and all the touch points along the way. So touch points are where somebody simply works on the product. And some of our products have far too many touch points. So for example, boots have something like 400 touch points. You begin to say, why do we have so many touch points in our products? Is there a way we can actually get fewer and fewer touch points? Maybe get 100 instead of 400. And so this fashion complex, by the way, has known change for decades. We're just now in the midst of another change. But these collaborations and the collaborative tools will be needed. And now I'm going to flip it to fashion a future that is rewarding and exciting. So thank you very much. I'll take some questions, trying to keep on time.
Yeah, so Trevor, we're actually a couple minutes over, but I'm going to have one question for sure, but I also thought it was interesting that the Gen Z is now the Zoomers.
Yes.
Does that mean that the Boomers are now going to be called Gen B? There's a lot of letters in between.
Yes.
And so we're all Zoomers today, but we may not.
We're all Zoomers.
And I also thought it was interesting. We talked about what people are wearing when they're Zooming, and I had heard from others that sometimes that they're only wearing stuff on top, nothing on the bottom, because with Zoom nobody can tell.
That's right.
They save money on their laundry. But my question was, you talked about the shoe seeds that you plant the shoe after you wear it.
Yeah.
Do you decide what kind of seed? Is it corn or is it lima beans or some other?
I don't know what the choices are, I'm afraid, Mike, but I do know it's probably coming from oat shoe, so it's probably some seed like a vegetable seed.
Okay, so you don't know what they grow once they get planted.
I haven't dug into that yet.
Okay. Okay. Well,
great.
With
I'm
that,
going to stop sharing.
You can stop sharing and you can text chat and see if there's a question for you that you want to answer. Okay. And you haven't stopped completely. You're still sharing your other computer. So
yeah, somebody was asking about sharing the presentation, and I shared it with John earlier today, so I would think it'll be part and parcel of the presentation.
We'll do what we can to make all those things available. Yes. Okay, so I want to turn to Will Duncan with the role of America. It says inland and in the world. And Will, give us your WDA perspective. Your Will Duncan Associates, give us the SEAMS perspective, because I know you've been doing a lot of things with that as well. So Ready, set, go. Are you muted? Will, got
Will, you're muted.
Okay, my bad. I'm sorry. Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We live? All right. Thanks, Mike. Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. It's an honor to be here with all the panelists who are industry colleagues and friends of mine. And we thank all of you out there for participating in today's session. So as Mike said, I'm the president of Will Duncan and Associates, and we're basically a business process optimization consulting firm, and we work with brands, retailers, and manufacturers really to help them create value for the customers by maximizing the effectiveness of their people, processes, and technology. And that may include helping brands take weeks and even months sometimes out of the time it takes them to bring new products to market. And a big part of that is going back to Trevor's touch points. That's basically what a lot of that work is taking out all the waste, taking out all those touch points, and doing the same, helping cut and sew manufacturers develop the ability to receive orders, produce orders, and actually ship those orders within 3 to 5 days, and sometimes even less than that. So that's some of the work we do. We also at WDA have responsibility for the management, marketing, and administration of the Seams Association. And for those of you who are not familiar with Seams, we're really a networking association with over 220 members, member companies that include brands and retailers. About 35% of our membership are the cut and sew manufacturers. Another 35% are the textile providers. So all your fabric guys, so your knitters, weavers, dyers, finishers, spinners, printers, your thread companies, your fiber companies, yarn suppliers, label suppliers, findings, and so forth, as well as the technology providers that all make up Seams. We work with industry to try and promote Made in the USA and help drive business to our members. That's a big part of what we do. So as the executive director of Seams, I have the honor, it really affords me the opportunity to speak with many companies throughout the U.S. supply chain within our industry. And so let me kind of transition back to the beginning of the pandemic. Not that many of us want to relive that, but as we all remember, it was kind of like the wild, wild west in our industry. Everybody trying to figure out what was going on. Companies, were hurting there for a while. Many of them were able to pivot 90 degrees over to PPE. And at that time, we formed a industry association alliance that was basically NICTO and INDA, the nonwovens, and IFAI and Seams, and then later AAFA joined us. And we were all just trying to work together to help support our industry and make sure we were sending consistent messages out. And it was really one of the great things about it is our associations are now working much closer than we ever have before. So that's one of the good things that's happened. And we've opened up, relationships with our members and other members of other associations that would have never happened before, especially with everybody and those that were pivoting over to PPE. And really that was our role, was to help coordinate, collaborate collaborate and be a conduit of information, which included serving as a conduit to the White House procurement task force for PPE, which is still going on. I'm not going to go into all the details of that right now because we don't have a week to do that. And I will just say that it's been an eye-opening experience. Throughout all this, I've been conducting sort of an informal survey, trying to keep up with how our companies and our association and other associations were doing throughout the pandemic, really throughout the entire supply chain. And felt like I was getting a pretty good feel for what was going on. And so when I was invited to participate in this webinar, I thought I'd do a little more formalization of it. And so put together a brief survey that I sent out to some of our members. It wasn't a large audience or number of participants, but was able to glean quite a bit of information, and it lined up with what I was getting. And I'd like to share some of that with you. Whoa, back up. All right, here we go. So one of the things I really wanted to do was compare where companies were pre-COVID to where they are now. And so pre-COVID, for the companies who do exporting, their offshore sales were trending up. About 50% of respondents said they were trending up. About 21% were steady, and 7 were really mixed, meaning some were up, some were down, and 21% did not export. With regard to domestic sales, as you can see, for the most part, a large percentage were trending up, and those that weren't were holding steady. And also, this was a mix of cut and sew, textile, and technology providers, and really some of the larger companies, medium companies, and small. So it was a wide section that we surveyed. So where they are now, offshore sales are trending up for 36%, down 21%, steady at 14%, 7% mixed. Domestic sales were trending up 43%, down 21%, steady 21%, mixed 14%. And sales from past customers, 14% were up, 21 down, 36 steady, and 29 mixed, again, meaning some were up and some were down there. Some of the other questions I asked was, have you changed your product offering as a result of COVID-19? And as you would expect, that was very high at 79% yes and 21 no. The largest driver of that was PPE, although it wasn't just PPE. I'll talk about a little more of that in a second. Are you picking up new sales? 79% are, again, related back to COVID or the PPE, and 7% no, and 14% are pursuing new sales, certainly pursuing new sales. And are you picking up sales from new product sectors? 71% yes. Again, not all of the largest driver was PPE, but not all of that was PPE. And some of the comments that I got back, summarized a few of those. And this was true for many of the respondents. They're seeing orders for very specialized products, a lot of niche markets, and even within some of the broader markets, sort of niche products that were being developed. Wholesale and private label was trending down, one person said by double digits. They're also seeing new sales from categories created out of new demands, such as PPE, as well as sales for D2C fulfillment from at retail. Those were three of the key takeaways. And then I asked about the future. And so what are you anticipating for future sales? 50% responded they're anticipating strong growth. 36% were cautiously optimistic, and 14 were anticipating flat growth. And believe it or not, 0% were pessimistic, which I thought was outstanding. Let's certainly hope this to be the case. So to sum that up, most of the industry is doing well and was doing well leading up to the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, most companies were impacted significantly. Many were able to pivot over to PPE and entered the PPE world. And that was both textiles and cut and sew. And I do want to give a shout out, take my hat off to our industry for how well we were able to respond to the PPE crisis. We had textile mills and cut and sew factories that pivoted in a matter of weeks over to producing much of the PPE that was provided to our hospital workers and those in need. And so congratulate yourselves out there, because I was amazed at how well our industry was able to respond. I don't know that you'll find many industries that can respond in a matter of, without those supply chains living here, to transition over like we did. Currently, PPE demand is we're seeing it start to slow down. Not that there's not still a demand, but many of the buyers are starting to return to some of their old buying habits and are sourcing lowest cost and again, lowest labor cost. However, hopefully we'll see us retain a significant portion of that business, because it can mean a lot to our industry if we're able to keep that. Our members are, many of them invested heavily. Some of them are transitioning away from PPE, I don't think permanently, but they're starting to see their work from brands and retailers are starting to pick up. I'm also getting more and more calls from brands, especially emerging brands, that are looking to source fabric and looking for domestic cut and sew. And I mean, we're fielding these calls, multiple calls a day from folks looking at it. However, let's face it, pre-pandemic, only about 3% of the apparel sewn and footwear sewn in this country or made in this country was sold in this country. So where are we really? We've got a long ways to go. To me, there are two key factors that are preventing significant growth of the U.S. sewn products industry. That's brands and retailers must change from cost-based accounting, from cost-based sourcing strategies to those that compare landed duty against manufacturing costs domestically. We can't continue to do that. We've got to measure it based on what's happening at the cash register and gross margin return on investment and service. And it's got to factor in things like markdown, stockouts, and all the other associated costs. Costs of DC, when the factories can ship direct to consumer right off the factory floor. But even if that's not in place, the biggest bottleneck is, let's face it, it's cut and sew. It's the current capabilities of our cut and sew sector. Most of the companies that we have in our industry in this country are less than 50 workers. which are too small for many of the larger and even medium-sized brands. If you have 100 workers in your cut and sew facility, you are considered very large today. Just selling labor, and many of them are just selling labor, which is working on very tight margins, and they're not capable of supporting full package. And our brands and retailers today want the same full package service that they've been able to receive when they moved offshore, in particular from the Far East. And I can tell you that the cut and sew companies here in the country that are able to offer full package are turning away customers every day. They can't even, some of them can't even make the calls back to the people. Much work. In addition, many of the manufacturing disciplines that were common to our industry 25 years ago have been lost. It's rare that I walk into a factory and I observe two workers who are performing the same operation that both use the same method. And formal sewer training programs are rare to see within the factory. Plus, the factories are having a hard time attracting labor, and that's a biggie. You know, they continue to try and find skilled labor and don't have the capabilities to bring on new labor and hire it. And many of them, they can't get in the door because no one wants to work in a cut and sew factory. They don't want to sit on a machine and do the same operation over and over and over the rest of their life. So factories are having a hard time enticing labor to come on board. Many of them still have traditional top-down management styles and very low employee involvement. There's no formal training or onboarding process in place. And they're still using progressive bundle system that pays people piece rate. So for real growth to occur, is going to require reinventing our factories. And automation is one of the enablers. However, we're still a long ways away from having fully automated factories, the lights out type of factory. Automation is improving. More and more money is being spent there, but not enough. We need more larger budgets for automation for us to get to where we want to see that go. Over the past several years, there's been a lot of buzz about the micro factories. Mike mentioned it earlier. And I think we'll continue to see these emerge. The biggest issue here, though, is all the front end technologies and collaboration and digitization. Much of that is already in place and has been for years. The problem that many of the companies, when they try and embrace the micro factory, is they still have to cut and sew. And they struggle mightily with getting that put in place. We're starting to see factories emerge that are designed to service made to order and direct to consumer, like one of SEAM's members, On Point Manufacturing, another new member of SEAM's, Evolution St. Louis, with their 3D and knitwear complete garment technology. We're going to continue to see more and more of these emerge. However, I think the factory of the future will be capable of embracing all of the above and more. It will be much more of a smart factory that will embrace robotics and other forms of automation where it's applicable and available. One of the things with all the automation today is it's just not, in most cases, flexible to keep up with most of the demands of the consumer and the brands and the factories. It will employ the latest manufacturing technologies regarding systems integration and real-time production control. The smart factory will embrace Industry 4.0, which includes machine learning and artificial intelligence to more accurately predict and manage performance and cost. It will employ lean manufacturing. It will employ lean business practices. It will employ lean management with extensive customer supplier collaboration, as Trevor was talking about in his presentation. We've got to have more collaboration. This smart factory is basically going to be lean on steroids. But the real key to me is repurposing of the workforce. So I want to leave you with this. Imagine a workforce that is highly flexible and cross-trained, working in lean teams from start to finish, throughput times in minutes rather than in days. These teams are flexible. They can change styles. The workers are cross-trained. They're knowledge workers. Information is being relayed to them directly to their workstations with regards to all the information they need to set product. If there's questions, they can look up online right there at their terminal any information they need to know about the product. Okay.
Okay, is that it?
The workers will be highly flexible and cross-trained, working in these teams. And we'll work, imagine, if these workers are working 35 hours a week out in production. The other 5 weeks, they're going to perform the direct labor and admin functions, such as accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing, inventory control, garment costing, on and on and on. So what does all this mean? Manufacturing some products in the U.S. makes good business sense. If you want more information around the WDA's vision of a smart factory, you can email me. We've developed a white paper on it. Would be glad to share it with you. Thank you.
Okay, Will, thank you. Appreciate that. And maybe towards the end, we'll have time for a question or two in our discussion.
Okay. Very good.
But I agree 100% with this 3 to 5 days or even less. And we've been preaching for a long time about it's not about the cost, it's about the profit. And you hit on it again about some of those models. Since I'm an acronym person, have you renamed what SEAMS stands for?
SEAMS.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, serving every apparel manufacturer and supplier.
That's good.
As a possibility, because it's not just in the Southeast anymore.
Yep.
So going to move on, and since a couple of things you've said are things that right along the lines of where I would be going with about factors and solutions, and again about how pandemics cause disruption, and we're in a very, very disruptive time right now. And I just couldn't resist pulling out this old picture I had of the first 5 megabyte hard drive being loaded onto an airplane. And there it is at an IBM computer sitting off to the left side from 1956. So it is amazing how technology has changed, and how the iPhone 11, there's now an iPhone 12 coming out. It will do everything that computer did plus 100 times more sitting in the palm of your hand as opposed to on an airplane. But as we go through these changes and the things that Trevor talked about and Will talked about, you can't just continue looking in the same way. If you do, your competition is going to look at things a little bit differently. You can't expect everything to be like it always has been, because other people are going to rethink if you don't rethink. And you heard some about what is changing. We went from a world of automation, and not totally manual, but a lot of automation went away. Well, now back in this on-demand world, the automation is coming back, and it's going to be coming back in a bigger way. And virtual is not just about meetings. It's going to go virtual fashion and from 3D body scanning systems. These digital body models are not new, but the way in which they're going to be applied going forward after the pandemic has changed. And we have the ability to make these virtual people look like real people, called avatars. And we're having the ability, technology is not new, but a lot of the applications are becoming new, where you can take your avatar and try things on and get nice quality in terms of how things look and what they do. Visualization is critical. 3D, in motion visualization. It's happening. It's going to be connected to a new era of shopping. More digital online. Again, it's not new, but the way in which it's going to take place is new. And look at it as no contact shopping. You don't have to go into a store and touch somebody. Social distancing is something we are, I don't know that everybody's doing it, but a lot of us are doing it and have done it. And as we take measurements, I think one of the key things, again, body scanning isn't new, but you don't have to be touched to get your measurements if you use currently available technology in body scanning. As you move into product development, moving from physical samples, as you heard earlier, to digital, where the design of the product is done digitally in 3D, and having the ability for all parts, the hardware, the thread, to be composed digitally without having to make physical samples and get those things approved. And then moving into the waterless coloring world. Again, inkjet printing is not new, digital coloring is not new, but the way in which it's being applied is becoming more and more and more in line with our supply chain, where you color on demand. And technology will allow you, if you're only going to make one, to color just that one. Making neckties, which will come up in just a minute. You can make one of each and have different colors, and the technology will allow that. The other thing is, think about making your patterns before you color your fabric, and making your marker before you color your fabric, so that you only color onto the part of the fabric that's going into the finished product. Sustainability is a key word. This ties right into the sustainability aspect and the ability to engineer a print so that after cutting and sewing, all the parts match and you have less waste, less throwaway. And then that ties into digital cutting, which again is not new, but now look at cutting that doesn't require markers to be made, where the printed fabric is scanned as it goes into the cutting machine, and then it gets cut automatically without having to make a marker. Again, more sustainability, more savings, things of that nature. And we'll talk about, we don't have total automation yet, but there is technology that is being developed and is in use in some products where it uses vision and the total process becomes automatic. And so in our on-demand microfactory world, those technologies are going to be used more and more, particularly when we're only needing to make 1 or 2 or 10, and we can still make 1,000, but we don't have to make 1,000 if that's not what the demand is in order to make better profits. 3D printing has been around a while, but the way in which it's being applied is going to become more and more disruptive. There has been a lot of work done on 3D printing of foods, hamburgers, 3D printed meats, I haven't tasted one yet because the last one I saw was more than $20,000 to 3D print the meat. But now with the 3D bioprinter, I saw just a month ago that Kentucky Fried Chicken has a project going in Russia to do 3D printed chicken nuggets that look and taste like real chicken nuggets, but they're not made from a chicken that you grow and then dissect. It's made from bioengineered particles and cells and things that come from chickens. And I didn't invent the Kentucky fake chicken. That was on the website where they were talking about this 3D printed product. And so you think if you can bioengineer meat, you can bioengineer leather, and a lot of that work's being done as well for 3D printed bioengineered leather for pocketbooks. A lot of work, as many of you know, in 3D printing shoes, but then other clothing products. Again, if you 3D print, you minimize the amount of waste, and you can print on demand 1 or 1,000, and the technology doesn't really get concerned with that. And so this was a 3D printed dress by a person from New York. Again, I don't know how comfortable it is, but it looks attractive. And it can be disruptive someday if we can bioengineer all kinds of materials. And if we can do a chicken, we ought to be able to do a t-shirt. And that's going to take place over time. And it also reinforces the making it locally, making it in the U.S. for the U.S., making it in your hometown for your hometown, things of that nature, where you can actually ship the product digitally to the closest converter. You may even be able to design some of your own and have it done. And so with that, yes, disruption is, it can be fun if you think about it differently. And I have 3 granddaughters, and they gave me a t-shirt that said, it was disruptive. It said, "I don't need Google, my wife knows everything." And then Mr. John Feehan said, "Oh, he needs one of those for his wife too." So, so with that, I don't know if we have any questions, but I know we'll have some discussion time in just a little bit. And unless there is a question, I didn't see anything come up. What do you see? Turn your microphone on. Is there a question?
Maybe an interesting question is, but so what's the future of fast fashion? We remember there was a trend in the past, but so that's a question on the chat.
What is the future of fast fashion? Well, it's going to get faster. The question is, what does fast fashion mean? Does it mean that you make it quickly from the time it's ordered, or it doesn't last very long because you're going to make it and then use it and then do like Trevor said and plant it in the ground and let it grow something else for you? So I don't know, but it's going to be happening.
I believe it will come in the discussion later because there are things that may touch this.
Yes, that is a great lead-in for Anastasia, who is
yes.
talk about how some of this whole product development, pattern making, 3D technologies, and how you prepare people for it, but also how you integrate a lot of those things that are already available, and will really be important as we get into the micro factory. So with that, Anastasia, I will
Can I share my screen?
turn it back over to you, and yes, you can share your.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Share screen. Okay. Hello. Can is everybody seeing my screen? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Now, I'll come after all these interesting discussions from everybody, the previous speakers, that are really experienced and troubled, and what is going to be everybody of us is really. I'm come to challenge some concepts, some ideas about, not about manufacturing, not about production,
Esto va a
but
ser a mano. Igual nos puede ayudar esta niña. Nada más tú lo marcas a dónde. Le van a poner estas placas.
can
Nada más
somebody
que hacer que
mute their microphones? Okay. Now, I tried to challenge the what I believe is really the problem with retail, consumption, sustainability, and image. And this has to do really with the consumer's image and the design of the prototype of the product. So I'll touch it in 3 parts. You will bear with me. I will not talk too much. I have a lot of pictures to show you. I'll just say in the introduction that we are going to touch where we are now in the design part and the consumer satisfaction, how we got there, what do we need, and then when we see a reality that affects retail, I will try to show you a presentation of the Telestia Fashion Learning Online. It's a unique online training system for a lot of the contributors to the final product that we get. And also a presentation of the CAD Telestia creator, which works with avatars, but another kind of avatars, the avatars we need for design. And let's distinguish them from the avatars we need for the customer and retail. I'm going to discuss about the avatars we need for designing and the automatic patterns, the automatic avatars and the automatic patterns we achieve with the Telestia creator. So let's go and see. Where we are. We are as you can see below in this, we see we want in a chaos. Do we want it? Is it useful or is it desirable? I don't think it is what we are working for. Do we want, is this the future of fashion? Do you see it like that? Recycling is not a solution to continue creating for. So I don't think, okay, it is good for now that we have so many extra unused, unsold garments, but I don't think it is something we need to design for. Now, what is the missing link? The missing link is how can we help our future designers and future pattern cutters avoid producing badly cut, bad fit garments for the high street, which we see here and we see almost every day. In order to say goodbye to that and have consumers pleased, we need really to go into a new learning paradigm. It's the education that needs changing. I agree with Trevor that there is a problem because the education needs changing. So how we will turn the toy box that a lot of fashion design courses are into a real toolbox by learning on the person, not on the stand, by accepting and respecting the individual body shape. Now, the missing link is that we need to seduce the new generation, Generation Z generation, the previous generation and the coming generations of fashion design students into loving creative pattern cutting and perfect fit. But how can we do that? Sorry. Somehow this has gone. Okay. Now, we need to have designers pleased enough to tattoo a pattern book page on their torso. That was Julian Roberts, whom I met in a conference about education a few years ago. And he approached me, I didn't know him. He is a well-known British designer. And he pulled up his shirt and he said, "Oh, you're Anastasia. I loved your book, Pattern Construction Encyclopedia, and I have tattooed it on my torso." Or how do we create fit patterns with satisfaction during their holidays? That's from Alice Prier, whom I had said that with these tools, you can work even in your holidays. And see, when she went to Senegal, she sent me this picture. So the missing link is, again, to have consumers pleased. So you can see these ladies. Sorry, I need to have this low. I don't know if it affects. Okay. So we need to cultivate satisfaction in technical creativity, fit that provides easy movement, which is not something that we can see all the time. So we need a new design paradigm to turn the process into real design creation. So which means design on real person, size and shape, not on virtual ones. You can use virtual ones in retail, in marketing, in a lot of levels. But you need to understand the designers, the pattern makers, they need to understand the bodies they are going to design for. So we need to accept and respect the individual body shape. And here we have some ladies in Calico proud of their creations. So we hope to make that by following the process from idea to real body fit towards the new design paradigm application with TC2 body scanner and the Telestian CAD fashion learning, Fashion Express, with great success and satisfaction. So now how we are going to do that? We need to see here the premise we are going to explore is the position we start from, the gap, the approach needed, and then a presentation of this innovative methodology. We are going to examine the customer expectations and needs, the retail availability. What is available? What can people find? Industry and retail expectations, education provision, student and designers' expectations. Our aim, a call to action for everybody, to change industry convictions on design processes, to shift the learning paradigm in fashion education and breed fashion designers with more technical and creative skills. The problem, as Jonathan Ive stressed on the presentation in the Design Museum, so many of the designers we interview don't know how to make stuff. And it's just tragic that you can spend 4 years of your life studying the design of three-dimensional objects and not make one. So the problem, the customer asks why 5 pants of the same size are completely different and ultimately no one fits. Too many cheap clothes. Do we want to continue wearing them and recycling them? Do we consider environment waste and other things? So that there is too little innovation pressure. There is market saturation and aesthetic fatigue by the customers. How does this help the industry? So the industry cannot find skilled personnel, as it was very clearly stated before, and we all know, in technical areas, pattern cutting, grading, garment construction, manufacturing. About 5% of the workforce, and that was in the UK, in a research, keep working beyond their retirement age because they cannot be replaced. What can solve that decisively? Sustainable fashion is a priority, but what does it mean? Recycling is not a solution. The whole field is uncertain of systems to be used in the industry. The industry doesn't understand which systems need to be used. The current concept and processes of design have not been identified yet as the main contributors to the confusion. It is identified that 80% of the impact of a garment happens at the design stage. So everything else is important, but if the design is not good, the products we have are not going to be desired. So what are we creating and manufacturing for? So do we want this to be the future of fashion? And now, with great respect for everyone I'm going to show, there's no disrespect, I want to show you that the availability has touched even the higher echelons of celebrities. You can see, and these women could not have a problem of cost to buy the good garments they want to work. So you can see even in ladies like you see badly fitting sleeves. They're too tight around the crown, and you can see down here You can see the problem down here. The sleeve is too tight along its length. So you can see even on television, and that's from France Telecom, and you will see from BBC and others, that and where the presenters are given garments by the companies that want to show the best garments. So you can see that the jacket is too tight around the chest. Sleeves are badly cut, too narrow. Even here in series that have been very expensively paid for, even here, bad fitting sleeves. So you can see that. And just an example of a good fit example, it's me that, with the same position these ladies are holding without a fault. So that's what we all want to have. We want to be able to find such garments. So for designers, there is the need to make things. Designers, in order to design well, must understand their products or garments. The designer needs the haptic experience to engage emotionally, to take ownership of the product, to care, and so become better. Personal satisfaction is a necessary ingredient during the creative process. So the missing link, how can we help our future designers and pattern cutters avoid producing this kind of garments? What we observe on the consumer part is aesthetic fatigue. We have too much of ugly things around us. There's quality and fit devaluation. We say, what do we want this? That's a casual garment. We don't care. That's why you don't buy. Expecting emotional durability in relation to size and fit. All researchers have shown that every generation, even this Zen generation, the Z generation, they say that we don't find from every research, we don't find the size and fit. So we don't like the garments. We don't want to buy. There is a longing for aesthetic satisfaction. What do you observe in the industry? Uncertainty of processes. Like the question, what is fast fashion? Where is it going? How do we produce? How do we manufacture? Where do we do that? There is an uncertainty. Mismanagement of resources. A lot of money and funding has been spent in expectations and aspirations of things that are going to help us, but not deep research. Fear of market loss. Panic reactions when dealing with the issue. The threat of unknown. Can we see our body? Creativity can be achieved on real body shapes. It can result in a complete turnaround of the market with no fear of failure by allowing designers to experiment easily in a process we need to invest in. The missing link, to reconcile the traditional but obsolete and slow way of working hands-on, as in the past, as a real creative designer, which creates real fashion, with the appealing, fast-paced but more virtual way of the current digital technology, culture, and virtual fashion. We don't drop it, but we need to reconcile both of them. The new design paradigm, turning digital fashion into real fashion, by working on real body shapes, not on virtual ones, and accept and respect the individual body shape, like the one you can see here. We have two different shapes, but we need to dress them both. We can. There is a need and challenge for a new supermaster fashion designer, and Telestia is ready to allow and support young designers combine the roles of the fashion designer, textile designer, pattern maker, and fashion technology in one role. Telestia Identity, I'll say it very quickly and you can find out about us, is ready for the challenge with 40 years research and experimenting in all levels of perfect fit and style, 40 years innovation and experience of applying the findings, both in CAD and learning, and 40 years of respecting consumers and designers. Now, the simple equation to select is virtual fashion versus real fashion. Virtual fashion leads on chaotic sizing. We don't have a standard sizing, pattern copying, customer dissatisfaction, unsold garments, and environment disaster. Real fashion is based on figure shape, basic shape, pattern blocks, creative style design, perfect fit and elegance that lead to customer satisfaction and managed productions. Is this a thinking prompt? Yes. Now let me show you the final one, which will make very clear what I have said. And then, okay, now. This is a short treatise on human shape variation. Time to recognize and accept it, and accept it in fashion. Time to respect the human body shape. We cannot claim to dress it in absentia. Understanding body measurements makes us better pattern makers. And there is a wrong way, this wrong way, and that's why we have the body scanners. But when people are studying, they need to understand what is the right way. This is the wrong way. This is the right way for total body length. Working on the body, the people who work on design, helps them understand size, fit, and style. Without this direct connection, any relation between body, size, fit, and style is lost completely. Digital body data interpretation is not easy, it's difficult. The transfer of them into real pattern, shape, and fit becomes an impossible task unless you understand the body. Digital fashion and media can be effective only when this relationship is active on the pattern. And so here you can see some examples that have been made with the technical design of the Telestia Creator. It shows, if you just see below the measurements, you can see the two or three basic top numbers. And these are two different ladies, but they wear the same garment. So a few centimeters difference make fit or not. Difference combinations in length and width make fit or not. You can see these ladies, they're different. Shape consideration, both in small and large sizes, makes fit or not. In image, which is what everybody is going to be following, as Trevor said in the beginning, and I agree, shape matters, size does not. Fashion plays with size, not shape, and this distances it from consumers. Any size or shape looks better when fit is good. You can see that here. Wouldn't you like to be wearing your vest, whatever the size? You can see all these variations. They look nice, they're acceptable because they wear their size. Even extremes like this look better in good fit. So we strive for inclusion and diversity in almost everything, even in our pets. What do we do for dressing decently, shape diversity, and consider inclusion in our planning, in our design, and risk-taking in market design? Do we care to consider people as well? There is a need for new retail, new design approach. On-demand manufacturing at scale can reduce overproduction and provide affordable personalization to customers. We need to change our marketing. We need to change our design approach. Customization driven by personalization starts from personalized design. So we must prepare for made for me. What to do? Invest in people, train them, teachers, designers, and students. Train people to understand the language of holistic design. It was done in the past. Why not do it again with the technology also? Help them enjoy the satisfaction of creation. Train consumers to enjoy their clothes and want more, or else they will continue being dressed like this and they won't care to buy more of the same. Markets have been training consumers not to take them seriously, to their peril. And I will need a few more minutes to show you how we do it very quickly. Sorry. So here you will see, you are seeing our training software online. And for example, if you want to learn pattern making, you can see here, you have sizing and measurement. I won't go into all this. I'll just show you an example of how you can learn to make a block. A simple block in a very short time by just using technology. We were the first to use technology in training. Now that online is needed in all universities and colleges, we are ready with a lot of awards and with participation with many universities when it was done. So you can see here, when you know your size, how you create in a few minutes a basic block. You mark the scale of your size, scale 1, Scale 2, as simple as that. Scale 3, you just draw your neck curve, you just connect for your shoulder, and you just mark your armhole. Anyway, I won't go into many more details, but you can see here the variety of all this. For example, for the simple garments, simple dress, you can see all these styles that are being taught how to make them. I'll give you just a simple example of this also. If you want to make this one, you can see it and you can easily learn by just following the process. And then I'll show you the automatic patterns, and then you can ask any question. I need just 5 minutes. So you can see here you have the pattern we made before, and you need to make adaptations for the style. So that means that you have the fit. You have already established the good fit, and now you need the good style. So you are going to have satisfied customers. So we make the changes on the fitted basic block, and in a short time, very quickly and easily, you learn how to make the adaptations we need for this pattern that you have made the style for. You are the designer, you have designed that. I will close this and go into the creator to show you how this can be done with the technical, I need to move this thing from here. And you can go in here, and I will start a design very quickly. All this. And I can very easily select the figure I want. Women's wear, pattern construction. I want the fashion design, and I will draw the avatar of a woman. You can import, if you like, the body scanner data from that we have paired it with the TC2 body scanner, and that's perfect. And you can import this, and you can have your figure. This avatar, I'll show you in a minute what you do with this avatar and how you design your garment. I'll show you one more thing, and then I'll show you how you do it. Instead of the fashion design, I go to the pattern construction, and I select here the fitted bodice block. Again, I input the measurements of the body scanner, and you see it took me that long to create the basic block. And now let me show you in a very small, quick example, how you can have a virtual fitting of 2 different ladies with different measurements. So you do what I did. You take the automatic, you select the fashion design, and you create your lady. And you import the measurements. And you have your lady. Here you have all the measurements that are from this lady. So you see her, it's like you have the person in front of you, and you draw as a designer the details that you like on this particular lady of this size and this shape. And you create a simple vest with the seam where you want it, with the V-neck where you want it, with the armhole where you want it. And now you will take the measurements, you flip it, of course, and then you measure it, and you have the exact measurements of the design that you have drawn as a designer. So you measure the distance from here and there, from the waist, from the armhole, from the neck, from every body point. It is real, it's not imaginary. And you create now the basic block for that lady, and you transfer all this information immediately by taking it from the design. So it is a miracle for the designers. It is a tool, and they can really create what they have in their minds and what suits the particular person It is realistic, it's not virtual, although you work with technology and on a virtual environment, but it is real. And so you have now another lady, and you can see the difference with different measurements. So you can see these two ladies. What have we done? We created the avatar, we've created the design, which is to their measurements. So the fit is good. The first stage is the fit is good. And now we want the style to be good. So we just mark the measurements on this lady again. That's how we created the examples I showed you before. And on this second lady, we have, of course, different measurements on the pattern, which we help the designer. We are enablers. We simplify things for them to be able to work for accuracy and for creativity. So we just transfer this information to the technical drawing, to the pattern, which immediately with an automatic convert to pattern. And now I convert it into pattern. So automatic figure, automatic basic block, design, technical design, and automatic pattern. This is what you can achieve with the Telestia Creator and with the body scanner. So I think I can stop here. If are there any questions while I'm here, or you want to put them later?
Some of both. I think, Mr. Fee, and there were a couple of chat comments. I'm just curious about one thing, because what you're doing is showing customizing it for a particular body scan or avatar. What would it take to have standardized sizing, particularly in women's stuff?
Absolutely, the same thing.
Is it possible?
It is absolutely, yes. You put the set of measurements you have, because usually companies used to have, nowadays it is chaotic, but they used to have table of for its size. And our students learn about, with this, I can go back and show you that. Just let me, I'll show you that down here on this thing.
But have the brands not been interested in doing this? Or are they changing?
Where is that? Sorry, I think I lost. Oh, here it is. I think, yes, here it is. Now, if we are here, we go to the sizes, and we have sizing, and we have standardized sizing, size tables, which students can learn to work on. Okay, yes, here, down here. So we have all the measurements that respond to the, well, we have the British measurements because we did it with English University. That's from research with the Manchester Metropolitan University in 1998. It's not all, but differences are. So you can go to each one of them and it gives you the measurements. You can use these measurements. You can import these measurements, and you can have.
If you want to share your screen, you have to share your screen again, because I gave Mike the word.
You're right. Sorry. You're absolutely
right.
right.
I can see it.
Can you see it now? You see here, it says click to select size. You go to this size and it gives you here the measurements you are going to use. So you can insert any measurement. That's not a problem. You can set it in a table. But I just showed that it can be done even, which this is the most difficult and challenging, it can even be done with personal measurements. And it can be done even made for me. I mean, of course it can be done with anything, that's not a problem. The thing is that there is the challenge of made for me, and it can be done. I can show you, if you can give me this time, just 5 minutes, I can show you what is the process of the Telestia process of design, both for manufacturing and for bespoke. That is in various languages. I go here, and I have a very short video of creation for production. Can you see it or do I need to share it again?
You can see it.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Everybody, okay, so I'll start it. So here, in 10 steps, time 15 minutes, a designer can create the idea, the figure, and get to the end of the style. So let's say you take the measurements or body scan them or we have them, whatever way, it doesn't matter, that's irrelevant. In training, it is important that the designer understands. So we have the avatar, we have the measurements of the avatar here, and then we work with the technical drawing, the way you show it. I'll skip this because you understand it, you show it before, with all the measurements and so on. And then once you have this, you create the block, you create the style, you can put the fabric in the creator and create and see how it looks. And then we have the toile. We always recommend that you have a toile. Even when you make a sample that can be manufactured for many sizes, for many people, but you need to make sure that the first fits. And then you're confident and you transfer that, but it doesn't take. The whole process takes, for 3 processes, 10 minutes. So in half an hour, you can make a new style, perfect in fit, perfect for the sizes. And another 10 minutes for the grading. I mean, you can have 2 designers every half an hour producing as many styles as you like. And these are the pattern pieces. And this is the garment. And then you go to the grading, which is 3D grading. Because nowadays, people grade 2-dimensionally, which means like grading a piece of paper, as if we do not have any depth as humans. I mean, they just grade it 1, 1, 1, 1. But you need to take the shape. So this gives you 3D grading. You have the basic pieces, size separation, and that's it. And then quickly I'll show you the bespoke with the lady. I'll just skip again a few steps because it is, and then you do the placement. And the same thing for the bespoke. I showed you that because it was more challenging. Now we have a different lady with different demands, different shape, different measurements. She wanted a dress. We follow the same process of technical drawing. We put it, and you can see her how it looks with the fabric. We transfer that for the style. We see it, which is important that it fits well, absolutely important. And then we have a very pleased lady because what she wears is what fits her well.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, yes, Anastasia, thank you for those that are with us. I don't know if I mentioned it, but Anastasia is in Greece coming to us and making all this work virtually. And there were a number of comments in chat. John, when we get into our Q&A, maybe you look up and see if there's a couple of those that we have time to go into.
Yes, I can answer them. Do you want me to answer this? I can answer some of these.
You can go on to chat and do that while we're listening to our next speaker.
Okay. Yes, excellent. I can do that on chat. Yes.
Yes.
Thank
so
you.
With that, we've had a number of interesting comments about technology, supply chain, what's going on with the pandemic and disruptions. And now I want to invite Glenn Jackman. And I don't know if any of you had a chance to read his bio, but if you read him on the invite, he's with the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina and has come there. He's been with the North Carolina Department of Commerce. But, Glenn, I want you to make a comment or two about your career. You had some start in the apparel industry. I mean, actually manufacturing product. I think it was in Florida, if I remember correctly. So if we can, Glenn, share your screen and let all of these people hear from you about that and about what kind of government support you're working on to help this industry.
Okay, let me get my screen up here and what's going on?
We don't have you yet.
Is it up there yet?
No.
No.
Anastasia, did you stop sharing?
I think I did, but what do I need to do now?
I don't know, because you're still dominating the screen.
Yeah.
You muted. You went mute. You turned your microphone off.
If I leave, I will leave the whole. I want to stop sharing. But
Just stop sharing. It's up at the top.
It is at the top.
While she's doing that, I'll just tell a little bit about myself. My name is Glenn Jackman. I'm with the Economic Development Partnership in North Carolina, and been with Commerce before that. And also before that, I was an apparel manufacturer in Miami, Florida. I had a factory down there and I had 300 employees. I started out with selling specialty shops and boutiques and grew to the department stores and chains and the Walmarts, the Kmart's, the Penny's, the Sears, the Federated stores. And I got to the point where I had factories offshore with Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Dominican, and some other places. And after that, moved up to North Carolina to kind of retired. I retired for a couple of years, and that didn't work out. I had working all your life, being a baby boomer, you're used to working. And so I decided to, the Department of Commerce in New York, not New York, in North Carolina asked if I would be a part of their textile team with my background in textiles and apparel and in manufacturing and having factories and showrooms around the world. So I decided to do that. Now working with Commerce, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of things that are happening here at EDPNC. We split up from the Department of Commerce from North Carolina about 5 years ago now, so we could break down our silos. We can work together with not only in international trade, that's the area I cover. We can work with marketing and research and also investment and expansions and recruitment from other countries and other states and other parts of the world. And North Carolina, we have 7 offices around the world. We have we have one in Hong Kong, one in Shanghai, Beijing, Mexico, Canada, Brussels, the UK. And we just opened 5 years ago one in Dubai that's been very successful. And last year we opened an office in Singapore, and we're expanding to Southeast Asia with that, and also in Thailand. And so what we do, we help North Carolina companies to export. That's the area I cover, international trade, and where we help them go to trade shows, market research, and help them find agents and distributors in these other offices and countries. And also, we help with the trade shows. There's a STEP program, which is federally funded. It's STEP stands for a State Trade Export Program. And we're in our 8th year, going into the 9th year of this. And this is where we help companies in North Carolina to go to the trade shows and export. They can have, there's different, so you can get up to, I have the breakdown here, but I can't pull up the screen. We have different areas where you can get to to help to go to a trade show, for example, you can get money up to $5,000 for your own booth. You can get money for traveling up to $3,000 for up to 2 people travel for a hotel and airfare. And then there's other things that we started just 3 years ago now. It's up to the funding has gotten higher and higher. It's up to $10,000 for to help with support with to bring up your own website for international websites. And there's a total of about $24,000 in this one particular program, different functions. And the way this was set up, it was set up for by year to year, starting October 1st through September. And it was funded year by year. And so we just, because of the epidemic, and we're not traveling, there's a lot of money we have not used to pay for booth space, for travel, for the hotels, marketing, research. The money's going back into the funding. So there's money available to do virtual trade shows now, because most of our shows have been either canceled or postponed to later on, either later on this year or next year and the following year. So the program's expanded for 2 years. So there's a total of, in the STEP program, you can get for $24,000 for 1 year, so it goes into 2 years. That's a total of $48,000. So this is quite a bit of money for small companies. When I say a small company, you have to be a company that's under 500 employees, been in business over a year, and be a member of the, you have to be registered in the state of North Carolina. This is not only just for North Carolina. Other states have the same thing. They're just, configuration is a little different, the way that they share their money. But that all works out, and each state has their own situation where they do that. And also there's another program besides, another bucket of money, which is from the federal government. This is for larger companies, the companies that are over 500 employees. And there's also money available for trade shows, for travel and grants and expansions. And that's pretty much it. And so I try to get my screen back up. Let me see if I can get it. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay. Trying.
Did you go to share screen at the bottom?
Yeah, I've got it, but nothing's happening.
There you go.
Well, we see your screen.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, this is the STEP program I was just we were talking about. You have step 8, year 8, and step 9, which will be on 24-month program. This kind of explains everything here. We get booth space for travel, commerce, where you can do up to a website for $10,000. Export services for marketing, research, translations of brochures and videos, different things like that. And also, because of the pandemic, we also were having webinars, with educational webinars, understanding, there's a whole group of them. All this information is on our website. This is part of the STEP program. And let me go back to the next slide.
I think you have to reshare again, and then you go to Acrobat. Yeah.
Yep. Up to where?
On the bottom, the red Acrobat, the red icon to the left.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
okay. Yes, here we go. Okay, this is who we are and what we do. This is where we have our offices. Canada, Belgium, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Japan, Singapore, Dubai, Mexico, North Carolina, and also we're just doing open one in one as of yesterday in Bangkok, in Thailand. And we help market recommendation with our foreign offices. We can set up actual Skype meetings and Zoom meetings. We get market recommendation. We can do pricing evaluation with your product that will fit in that market. Export education, export finance assistance, market entry strategy, certificate of resale, market intelligence, product review. Will help you find an agent, distributor, or buyer, and also the trade show assistance before you go to the trade shows. And let me go back to share another screen. And this is a North Carolina Manufacturers Expansion Partnership, which is federal money that's been funded to the state of North Carolina. And this is also the same type of thing where it's with a website's $10,000, international trade booths. Anyway, long story short, there's a lot of funding which is out there, which is available, which we didn't know about. A lot of companies don't even know about. And the companies have been doing this, have been doing this for 7 to 8 years. And for the companies that been with us, and these smaller companies, their increases in international sales have increased anywhere from 10 to 60% because of this. So this is kind of what we're doing. We look forward to helping anyone we can. And I can say all the other states have the same thing if you're from another state up here. Any questions?
So Glenn, you've talked about from North Carolina, but you had also mentioned to us that there's some similar funding for quite a number of states. I don't know if you have a list of them or can share with us a little bit about, is that like the same STEP program that's here?
It's the same STEP program, but each one is different. You know, if you look at my website, you can send me an email. I'll get you whatever state you're with. I can get you information from that. What the states, what they have available.
Okay. And just another thing to share that you talked with us about is that you have to be a for-profit company. Nonprofits, regardless of their size or whatever, from what I understand, are not eligible for this type of funding. Is that correct?
Yeah, you have to be a company. It can't be a consulting or an association. It has to be a company that's been in business and actually manufacturing, doing something, and having production.
Okay.
So Glenn, this is Will Duncan.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Glenn, good job. I just wanted to share that I participated in this program, and Glenn and the rest of the crew with the extension do a wonderful job. They really do. They work for the state of, they really work hard for us here in North Carolina and you as a company. I literally was able to receive funding for the fee to participate in Magic's online trade show. I believe Hoob was as well, but also received money to revamp my website. And so it's really, really good, easy process to go through. And I thank you for all the good work you're doing.
Thank you so much. We've streamlined the application. It's like a 4-page application. It's very simple. You can do it on a computer, and it's very simple. If anybody has any information on that, you can just let me know.
And so, Glenn, all these other countries that you're involved in, is it for exporting U.S. products to those countries, or is it the other way around?
Well, it's what the international trade is to help North Carolina companies export to these countries and other countries around the world. And also, if we don't have an office in one of these countries, where there's funding also available to work with the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Commercial Service, where they have over 80 offices around the world. If anywhere there's an embassy, they have an office. And so they can use they charge for their service, which is called the Gold Key program. So if we don't have an office there, you can get funding for that Gold Key service in that country.
Okay. Well, Mr. Fian, are there any questions online that you want to bring forward to this group? Or to Glenn, since he's on the stage right now.
I don't really think so. I think online happened a lot. Trevor has answered, Anastasia has answered. I answered some questions, so I think most are covered.
Was there any key questions that either of you answered? Anastasia, you were
I
recently.
did.
I'm curious.
Yes, I did. They are here, I mean, for everyone. I think I answered most of them. And I really thank you all, because with whatever we heard from the other panelists was very interesting and challenging. It is really, as Will also said, that we need to think. We have, as you said also, Mike, we need to think, start changing our thinking. And that's what we are all trying to contribute here. And I want to say to everybody attending and to all of you, we work with John quite strongly to really panel pair the body scanner and our technology. And we thank you all for supporting this. I thank you for organizing it. It was a big thing. Thank you very much.
Great. I too would like to thank all
Will,
the...
you might want to answer this one. I just thought, okay, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you to all the visitors and guests and presenters, because this is really a very exciting session. I hope we can schedule another one in the near future, because this is really replacing all those trade events, and we've just gone virtual. So I think we need to do a few more. I know John doesn't want to hear that, but we have to tell him. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Will, I'm going to put this one to you. I just saw a chat that came in that said, how does a company avoid a cost-based model if the consumer focuses on price?
You want to answer that one, Mike?
I was going to let you start it. I think you and I are probably on the same page about that.
Yeah.
But,
read it again, if you would, please.
it said, how does a company avoid a cost-based model if the consumer focuses on price?
That's what we showed. It cannot, what I suggested doesn't cost a lot.
So part of that, it's really a change in the brands and retailers' mindset, switching from strictly viewing cost to evaluating their sourcing, developing their sourcing strategy based on all the other things we've talked about. You know, quick response, not having all of the inventory, factoring in markdowns and stockouts. And, you know, we've done that. We've known this for years. We've run exercises of it, and they always bear out that in many product sectors and categories, you can produce in that type of a quick response environment. You can produce, you can pay a manufacturer more, and the retailer and retailer end up having better customer service and better margins, and bottom line, make more money on that program than they do offshore. But it has to be evaluated differently, because if you just compare landed duty against manufacturer cost, the U.S. is going to lose. under that model. Okay, so and some of the brands have started looking at this. They just haven't, and it's a bigger change than we realize, because particularly with the larger brands, that model is ingrained. I mean, they're folks that are doing their sourcing and their buying are evaluated based on who can bring it in the cheapest, and they are rewarded that way. So it's a culture change within a brand to source that way. Now, one of the good things we're seeing is a lot of the newer emerging brands, a lot of the online brands and so forth, they don't have all that traditional. It's interesting, we're now calling their offshore low labor cost traditional costing model, right? But it really has become that. And many of them are much more open to looking at service and not factoring in all that, just strictly cost. They're really looking at, if you can get it and service me and I can make some margin on it, that's where we want to be. So,
maybe I can elaborate on that. I think, and I think what Will all says is 100% correct. I think there's another angle. Maybe what I read out of the chat of the customer, about the person in the audience, is, of course, if you do the comparison, but if we offer, let's say today, exactly the same as that white T-shirt made in mass by 5,000 pieces at the same time in China, and they deliver it here, then of course, if you go exactly make that same white T-shirt, then it is hard to differentiate yourself. I think what we try to do is also to show that we have to differentiate the product, and that we have to have a different product than that same white T-shirt in one size. And then, so if you have a factory here and you work with 10, 15, 50, maybe 100 people, you have a different niche market where I think you can be more competitive than others. But then we should not walk in line with them exactly offering the same product. So if we differentiate our product a little bit, and of course I don't have here yet the wonder stick and I can answer everything for everybody because I don't know their business model, and I don't know, there's maybe not a magic one for everything. But if we make maybe a product that is differentiated and the customer could pick some options, let's say in different print and different logo and different embroidery, and that we can make sexy, and then the customer has a differentiator, then actually it's impossible to ship that by the thousands, but you have to make it here because I have to make one in blue and one in red and one in yellow and one in different size, of a different embroidery, of a different print, or a different shirt with different buttons or whatever. And in that way you have a differentiator. And then I think the whole costing, what Will says, then you don't have maybe that stock because we make it on demand. So the production is one thing, and you can, of course, you have to compare import duties and transport and time and waste stuff that you have stock that didn't get sold or stolen. Of course, that's totally one part, but the other part is if you differentiate your product and you go in line, then it's not possible to manufacture it in that large consideration, and then maybe you get more competitive. So I think it has two sides on that equator.
You're exactly right.
Can I add to this? It is a complete, it's a culture change, completely a culture change. If we consider the tons of unsold garment, the tons that need to be recycled, the tons that need to be burned, and this, I mean, the consumer has kicked away this one. It is, the consumer is fed up. This doesn't work anymore. There needs to be another approach. And as John said, it is a redistribution of profit, of costs, and the whole thing needs to change. And as I said in my presentation, it is a change of marketing, a change of design, and the consumer has the ears open, is ready to listen now. So I think it's the right time that we all think a little bit deeper and differently. The education system needs to change. A lot of changes, of course, but the pandemic, I mean, it's a bad thing, but as a Chinese proverb says, a change can be a disaster and can be an opportunity. Let's see it as an opportunity, as a chance to make the change needed and benefit, because we all want to benefit. That's my suggestion.
And I agree with you and the points that Will made, and that's why when we talked about instead of a cost model, a profit model, and we have shown that in certain cases you can pay 20% more for the product, sell it for the same price, but at the end of the season or the life of the product, you've made more profits because just like you just said, you're not marking things down, you're not closing out inventory and giving it away or putting it in a landfill. So,
Mike, let me just add,
yeah.
I wish I had it pulled up and think about it in time. I saw a survey that was done of the industry. One of the larger reputable firms did the survey. And again, it showed that today, U.S. consumers are willing to pay 20% more for U.S. made products, which again is, you know, that's one way around it,
Yes.
is to put a program in place that, you know, your marketing is made in USA and charge, and you should be able to charge more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
There is a value to that.
Anybody else have a comment?
I believe in made in America. It can be done. And I think we should all strive for that. I'm here to help you. That's
Let me-
what I can say.
Yeah, let me throw one other.
I would just like to make a comment because we're all talking about cost. There's another cost that's coming on our heels, which is the transportation and distribution costs.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And people are paying like $5, $6, $7 to get something delivered. And so often many of our products are made for less than the transportation costs. And so nobody's picking up on this, or at least nobody's talking about it. But that too has to change.
Yes. Good point.
True.
Yeah,
True.
there is definitely. Let me add one other thing to it. You know, when you start thinking about the smart factory concept with these lean lines, think about the direct to consumer shipping and the ability to now ship directly off the end of a production line to the consumer and bypass the DC. Think of the savings that you that can be had by I'm not going to say eliminating the distribution center for everything, but for those models, it can be eliminated and significantly cut down on some of Trevor's touch points and some of the transportation costs associated with that model.
Well,
Hello, Patty.
I'm muted there.
Why? Why did you do that?
All right. So let me just ask if there's anybody in the audience that wants to ask something without chatting, you can maybe turn your microphone on and ask a question if you have one. We've got just a few minutes left and we'll be glad to hear from you. And if you don't, we'll set a new record and finish a little early. But before we do that,
Hi, Mike.
yes, Jim Hopkins.
It's Jim Hopkins. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for the presentation. I've enjoyed it from everyone. I just posted on the chat. We were talking about cost increases or viewing other costs, and my question was, what about the $15 per hour minimum wage that's going into effect virtually across the country? That also has to be considered. Thank you for your comments.
Jim, I just reacted that you're absolutely right. It does have to be considered and it has to be factored in. But I think when you weigh in all the other costs, that's one of them. It still bears out you can pay domestic manufacturers more in many product sectors than you can offshore and still make more money.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we need to set up a demonstrative model that can help do that. You remember we used to have one, Will, but it's a little outdated.
Yeah, I mean, you know, think about it. You know, you bring in through a traditional program, you bring those goods in, and let's say the crystal ball was wrong, and you're only selling 40% at retail, and you end up with significant markdowns on the rest, or selling it off to the outlet stores at pennies on the dollar. That eats up a whole lot of that $15 differential in
absolutely.
in rate, right?
Yeah, and also, you know, don't forget that there's duty coming in. And some duties are really pricey. You know, I'm talking now about 30% duty. So if you can avoid duty on the products, you're going to actually be way ahead, even if we have to pay.
Absolutely. The other one, Trevor, is the stockouts, because that traditional model, you know, when something sells, you're not getting many, if any, replenishment opportunities like you do in the U.S. So if you're only bringing on 40% of the orders up front and then replenishing and have replenishments based on what can sell, you can ensure you always have that size 8 in red of that style on the shelf, because that's the one that's selling.
True.
Can I say something about it's ideas now? We are now trying to give our ideas. There is a lot about the microfactory that Mike also mentioned, and there is this trend quite strong because you don't have, it's the 3D printing, it's the coloring that is easier and so on. And if you have a flexible way of creating the sample and then buy it individual small manufacturing places, you don't need, these people may be fewer numbers but working for themselves, and the cost may be lower at the end. All these new small startups, smart companies, as they say. Nowadays, they have to be smaller, smart companies. That's why the whole culture needs to change. Why do we need to have all the big numbers that are being made in China or whatever? It can be done with many people involved and having a personal satisfaction and profit. And the consumer satisfied. There's a lot to be thought about that. The change is coming. Now, the thing is, where are we going to stream things? That's the big question.
Does anybody else in our audience have a question or comment they want to make that they haven't put on chat, responded to?
Because something else I want to add, we consider things with the preconceived ideas we have about pay, about manufacturing ways, about everything that we know about. If we have a completely new model, all these things will fall into this model. And I think that that's a change of thinking that requires. Let's keep our strengths and try to see what we're going to do with our weaknesses.
Right.
Hello, Mike. This is Miguel Ortiz from Lima, from Creditex.
Hey, Miguel.
My regards to all of the members of the panel. Quite interesting. I do have a question. As we see that most of the sourcing from mainland China is moving away, we believe that alliances within America may give us an opportunity, starting from transportation and quick response. We will cut down like 35 days of shipping time right there. So actually we do have beautiful fabrics, great raw material, but our manufacturing costs are not as competitive as in Bangladesh. But maybe there are more competitive manufacturing costs in Central America, or maybe the new mini factories will make those goods in the US. That will also give it a more flexible and a quicker response. So what I was asking, and I would like you to contribute or comment a little bit, is that in this model, alliances between companies would be possible to think of? Thank you very much.
Well, I would say absolutely. And Trevor, you actually mentioned some of that in your comments about where the fashion was going, because
Yeah.
it wasn't just about made in US, but it is nearby. You want to say a few things?
Yeah, yeah, and it was also on the slide on collaboration. So it's not just collaborating with other people who are the same, it's actually collaborating with people who have different strengths. And so we have done this in the past, we do know how to do it, but sometimes we just forget about what we know. And so sometimes it's good to revisit that. And I agree with you, Miguel. These alliances are very important. I just call them collaborations rather than alliances, but they're the same thing. The other thing, and I have to make a comment here, and I'm coming now from the academic world, we look across the academic world at architecture. And you say, this person's crazy. But actually, architects are very, very similar in how they think to fashion designers. Because
Absolutely, yeah.
we're fitting the near environment rather than the external environment. But one of the things that architects have, and we do not have, is something called specification in the design space. That is, the complete specification is done at the design stage. And we need to work on this. You know, it's something we have to do, we have to get it right, because that is going to expedite all of our design and development time. And if we can do that, yeah, I'm pointing at Anastasia here, because there's big opportunities if you can actually do that. But look at the tools the architects have, they're really exciting.
Yes, indeed.
Trevor, that's a great point. If you look at it, good tech designers are making as much as architects do.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Right? I mean, they do.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, too many of the technical designers have never stepped foot in a factory. They don't understand what the technical packages they're creating. They have no idea the environment that's actually being used. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This
That's
is
an
one
issue.
of the things that, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. This is a big thing. And this is one of the things that has resulted from fast fashion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because everything was fast in the industry, it became fast in education. I can tell you about English colleges and universities. I work with almost all of them. And the thing was, after the late 90s, they wanted to have design only, drawing. Design meant only drawing, whereas design in ancient Greek, where I have the culture from, means that the sculptor needed to really understand the making and the design and the final touch. That's what design means, not just draw beautiful things. And that's what we advocate, and we have enabled people and designers to do. That's our concept. And thank you very much for pointing it out, Trevor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Miguel,
true.
thanks for your question. That's a good point.
Thank you.
Mike, I
Good
can't
to see
hear
you, Mike.
Okay, same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To see me virtually, not. So before we close out, Devin, we talked earlier, and you do such a good job of summarizing things. Can I assume that you're going to write something up about what you heard today?
Absolutely. I will. I've got to get my head and arms around all of that terrific information.
Okay, well, if you need any assistance and follow-up, you know how to find us.
I do, most of you, except Anastasia, I think, and I can follow up with you to get your info.
Please. With John, and we'll always together.
We have all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Mike, I was just going to say, Devin will be writing a piece for us, it seems, on this. It'll be going out in our newsletter. And I'm sure he'll be sharing it on his ETC as well.
Right. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, it may be a variation of what I produce for scenes.
Right.
Okay.
So there's plenty of info for sure.
So with that, I want to thank Mr. John Feehan for helping to coordinate this and get things put together and get the invitations out. And Trevor, thanks for leading things off and representing not just university, but industry as well. Will, we're going to rebrand Seams here after this, it looks like, and come up with something that WDA stands for too, but I'm not going into it today. And Anastasia, I know you do a lot of work in the UK, and Trevor also is originally from that part of the world, but thank you for being with us at a little bit later hour than us. And Glenn, glad to hear about all that stuff you did in the garment before you started working in the government, because it helps you understand us better. So
Yeah.
thank you for all you did, and for all of you that have participated and listened and chatted. We're gonna call it an end unless somebody needs to make a final comment.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks to all.
Great.
Bye to
Thank
all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased to have met you all. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
you're welcome to Greece, I hope, when things open up.
Only if you supply the ouzo.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all. Bye-bye.